too, I know. That's the sermon. It's fine. All the way till the sermon. You can put your book on it. Just don't take it.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the First Religious Society, Unitarian Universalist in Newburyport, Massachusetts. My name is Nancy Crocher, and I'm your worship associate this morning. We come together as a church community, online and in person, committed to peace, love, and justice. Our core values are authentic connection, courageous action, love, spirituality, and wonder. Our mission and our invitation to all of you is to come as you are, journey together in love, act with courage, transform our world. If you're visiting today, or joining us for the first time, welcome. We're so glad you're here. To access this morning's order of service, please click on the QR code located on the paper in your pew, or on the link that you'll find in your reminder email that was sent this morning. Or, for those of you online, in the links just below the live stream. We also hope you'll join us online this afternoon from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. when Reverend Rebecca will be facilitating a sermon discussion group. Everyone is welcome. The Zoom link is in your order of service. Every Sunday we say that it's no small thing that we've gathered. Each of us comes with our needs and desires for this sacred time, so let's give ourselves to it. I welcome one and all to our church and our worship service. Thank you. It's great to be together.
Our call to worship this morning are the words of Nancy Bright Sky Harris, a contemporary Nipug leader, singer, and dancer in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow. And she writes, "Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, hear your people calling, calling in their prayers, in their dreams, for direction. We want to see a new sunset, a new beginning for our children and of the next 7 generations to come. Guide us to the right path and let our moccasins follow in your steps. Aho. You are faithfully called to worship. Please join now in our chalice lighting words as Nancy lights the chalice. The words can be found in your online order of service or in the card found on the top of your gray hymnals in your pews. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace, representing 2 places on earth we lift up and remember as a sacred encounter with our world. There are untold numbers of places on earth that need peace. These 2 we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we invite you to speak together the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle this morning is lit for Moseley Pines in Newburyport, where tomorrow we will be holding a service for Indigenous Peoples Day, created in partnership with those in our community and under the leadership of Indigenous people and their traditions. May these acts and this worship be the beginning of our work of reparations to those whose land we stand upon. Peace, salam, shalom. Our second candle this morning is lit for the Philippines and Russia, home to Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov, respectively, and the most recent recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize. These journalists lead independent news outlets in their countries and were honored for their work to hold leaders to account. We honor the work being done to correct media suppression by these people and all across the world, including in America, and with our own member, Tom Stites. As Unitarian Universalists, we work to affirm, promote, and protect democracy. Peace, salam, shalom. We will now join together in our opening hymn, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. To honor the safety of all who are gathered, we ask those in person to take in the music and refrain from singing, while those of you participating online may sing your hearts out. Please rise in body or spirit, and let's join our voices together in our affirmation of faith and doxology, which for the time being we will speak together until it is safe to sing again. The words are in your online order of service or again on the cards on your gray hymnal. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land, by every tongue. You may be seated.
This is the time in our service when the offering will be gratefully received. If you're worshiping in person, we encourage you to make your donation online using your mobile device. We will be sharing how to do that in one moment. The generosity of our community is an essential ministry that supports the work of the church to live out our values, mission, and ends, both in Newburyport and beyond. Each week, 50% of the Sunday offering not designated as a pledge goes to a local community partner engaged in important efforts to transform our region. The October shared collection will support the Greater Newbury Elder Pet Fund, which serves Newburyport, West Newbury, Amesbury, Salisbury, and Rowley. The fund works closely with the area councils on aging to identify elders in need, then collects and distributes pet food and financial donations. 100% of the donations go to our elders and their pets. Imagine the pain of having to surrender a beloved pet, a best friend, because you can't afford food or veterinary care. That's just not right. Please support our deserving senior neighbors and their loving pets. At this time, we encourage you to make your offering online. If you're viewing the order of service on your phone or on your computer from home, there's a link you can click on in the order of service or in the video description where you can make your contribution. You can also text a contribution by sending the word GIVE FRSUU, that's all one word, GIVE FRSUU, to the number 73256. If you'd prefer to make an offering by cash or check, you can use the time as the music is playing to fill out the information, and there will be baskets available as you leave the service. And of course, you can always mail a check to the church as well.
This is a time in our service each week when we lift up the joys and sorrows among our members and friends. I will share those that I have been told in advance, which you can always email to me by Friday and/or put them into the basket that's on the welcome table outside the front door of the sanctuary. Nancy Kidd, our pastoral care associate this morning, will light the candles as I read the joys and sorrows. Those of you who are online are invited to share yours in the chat, however, they won't be read aloud at this time. Jim and Nancy Kidd ask that we light a candle of sorrow, and they write, "It is with great sorrow that we would like to report that Jim's sister, Evie, died on Thursday. She fought a valiant and courageous battle with failing health for many years and is now at peace." We also light a candle of joy this morning. Yvonne McQuilkin and Art Henshaw share, "A new life has entered our world and family on Friday, a baby girl named Sunday. She's healthy, a ginger-haired 8-pound little bundle born to Yvonne's daughter Alex and her husband Andy in Beacon, New York. What a blessing," they say, "to be personally touched with joy and wonder at the miracle of birth." And we light one final candle, as we do each week, for all the joys and sorrows that, although unspoken, are just as important and held in our hearts. And we'll move now into a time of meditation, centering, and prayer. A core philosophy of Jainism is anakanadvad, which in Sanskrit means non-one-sidedness or many-sidedness. Like indigenous beliefs, it acknowledges that more than one person or perspective can be correct at the same time. Me being right doesn't make you wrong. You may remember this from the parable of the elephant that I shared at one of our outdoor services in the spring. Each of us touches one part of any experience. And unless we are careful, we can presume that that is the entire or only perspective of an experience or a person. This concept of many-sidedness was fundamental to Mahatma Gandhi's teachings on nonviolence. In offering such openness to the perceptions and experiences of others, we practice compassion. It is essential to true conversation. Mahatma Gandhi wrote this in 1926. "I very much like this doctrine of the manyness of reality. It is this doctrine that has taught me to judge a Muslim from his standpoint and a Christian from hers. Formerly, I used to resent the ignorance of my opponents. Today, I can love them because I am gifted with the eye to see myself as others see me and vice versa. I want to take the whole world in the embrace of my love." And we will now listen to the Jain prayer that accompanies this concept. As we do, imagine taking the whole world into your heart, making room for the truths and perceptions of others. Just for a moment, experience the beauty that comes from such wholeness. We're having some technical difficulties. Okay, shall I move on, Justin? I'm going to guide us through this, in case this, unless that made it work. Let's try. No. It's beautiful music. We'll place it up on the YouTube channel, but let's just for a moment improvise and take a moment to bring yourself fully into your heart. Not even into the body so much as the heart, that place of openness, that place of compassion. And as we do so, I invite you to bring into your heart a situation that has caused you worry, concern, anxiety, frustration. And as you settle upon one particular instance, bring also into your heart the other people who are involved with this. They may be people you know deeply or people you don't. It may be a world situation, but we know others who are involved. Bring those into your heart. And as we sit in this space, bring to your awareness the perception that you hold about this issue. What is it that you feel? What is it that you think or believe? What experiences in your life led you to that place? And imagine yourself in your heart now turning to another person or people who also interact with this same issue or experience. Can you leave your perception for just a moment and enter into their moccasins? What is it that person or people feel? What is it that they believe? What may have happened in their life that led them to such conclusions? And moving further around the circle one more time, putting those folks aside and yourself. Imagine yourself stepping into the shoes of yet another individual, another group of people who have a third experience of this situation. What is it that they believe, feel? What is it that led them to have this perception or belief system? And now imagine yourself rising above all three perceptions and just looking down and realizing that in the center of these groups of individuals or people, all revolve around the same experience, all bringing their perceptions, their feelings, their beliefs. Amen.
despite every test you can do in the world, for some reason something is not working that was working an hour ago. We thank you for your patience and understanding, and we'll share what the choir has to share online this week. Thank you.
Today's reading is called Generous Listening by Marilyn Nelson. A conversation can be a contest or a game of catch with invisible balloons. They bounce between us, growing and shrinking, sometimes floating like cloud medicine balls, and sometimes bowling at us like round anvils. You toss a phrase, and understanding blooms like an anemone of colored lights. My mind fireworks with unasked questions. Who is this miracle speaking to me? And who is this miracle listening? What amazingness are we creating? Out of gray matter, a star spark of thought leaps between synapses into the air and pours through gray matter into my heart. How can I not listen generously?
Friends, have we humans forgotten one another? Tell me, in our busyness, our fear, our judgments, our desperation, have we forgotten we belong to one another? Have we forgotten how to love one another? How to see the sacred spark of creation in each other's eyes? Have we become so righteous and sure of ourselves as to think we do not need one another to survive? Or that we are smart enough on our own accord? Turn to one another, writes author, activist, and leader Margaret Wheatley. We must turn to one another and see. Finally, see. And so I invite you to turn to someone. If you're here in the sanctuary, turn to whoever is closest to you. If you're sitting some distance apart, which is likely, turn and maybe bridge the gap with eye contact. If you're online, turn to someone. If they're with you, if you're alone, pick up a photograph, look out the window. Or close your eyes and allow a person to come to your mind. Turn, pause, and look. Look beyond your discomfort. You're feeling silly or concerned you are doing this wrong. Look beyond your certainty that you already know this person at whom you are looking, or your sadness that you don't know this person. Look at this person and see their beauty. Imagine the warehouse of riches they have inside them. This person at whom you are looking or remembering carries a lifetime of experiences, dreams, and questions. Like you, they have felt sad, exuberant, and at times lost in their life. Like you, they question, they wonder, and hypothesize. Like you, they hurt, they bleed, and they love. Now bow to that person and turn to another person in the sanctuary or in your heart. See their face as best as you are able. Notice something perhaps you have not noticed before. Drawing on generous listening, Marilyn Nelson's beautiful poem that Nancy read, look at this person and ask yourself, who is this miracle looking at me? What do I not know about this person? What might we teach one another? And now bow to that person and bring your awareness back to yourself. Take a moment to center yourself, maybe placing your hands in your lap, one palm cupping the other. Take a breath. Thank yourself. You just took a leap of faith, connecting with another person, even without speaking. It takes awareness and courage to slow down, to interrupt our thinking that we know one another, and to instead ask questions about who it is we see. Krista Tippett calls this moving away from the false refuge of certitude. It's vulnerable to see one another, and it's brave. It is vulnerable to turn to one another, and it is essential for meaningful conversation. If you were to ask yourself one question about conversation and what it really means, or how do we know if we've engaged or are engaging in authentic conversation, I personally, this is just my own experience, the question I ask myself is, have I been changed? Am I willing to be changed? Am I willing to enter into a conversation with a person, a stranger, a family member? It's all the same. Am I willing to enter into that conversation, vulnerable and brave enough to possibly change? If no other way, we change by virtue of having the experience that is now part of the repertoire of our memories. Or do we move along on automatic pilot? Or do we tune others out? Or do we enter into conversations so sure we are right? Is my purpose in the conversation to prove someone else wrong? Protect myself? It's vulnerable and it's brave to turn to one another. We have many opportunities at church to do this. And I think it's one of the many, many, many gifts of being part of this community, is we get to practice. Whether you're in a chalice circle, coming to a sermon discussion this afternoon, greeting one another outside after the service, coming to tell me that you don't understand why the order of services are not printed anymore. See how I sneak these things in there? There are so many opportunities to have conversations. I am changed all the time. It's easier in certain circumstances, of course. It matters. It matters. It matters that we hear one another. And we don't have to agree. The purpose of conversation is to learn, to be changed, to connect, to have a deeper understanding and an appreciation. It isn't necessarily that we have to come to an agreement. It isn't necessarily that we're going to prove we're right. None of that. By the way, before I go on, the order of services are online, mostly from COVID's perspective and seeking to have as safe of a space as we can with less things handed out. The other thing we realize, as is actually what happens when we begin to think of things new, is that it saves hundreds, potentially more than a ream of paper every Sunday, and the ink that goes onto that. So we do have copies available if you need them. However, it does support our commitment to climate justice as well as a safe environment as much as possible. In her book, Turning to One Another, Margaret Wheatley writes about this need and her belief that conversation holds the promise of what we need right now in this world. She also writes about the deep loss that accompanies forgetting to turn to one another. She writes, and I read this as a quote, we promise each other and we promise ourselves everything except each other. We promise ourselves everything except each other. We've forgotten the true source of contentment and well-being, which is, of course, each other. Martin Buber, Jewish scholar, philosopher, and activist, highlights the need for this genuine connection and conversation and wrote, human life and humanity comes into being in genuine encounters. The hope for this hour depends upon the renewal of the immediacy of dialogue among human beings. In his seminal work, I and Thou, Buber wrote about the necessity of connecting with other people in their sacredness as they are, rather than objectifying them. This kind of seeing moves from the I-it relationship, characteristic of capitalistic and materialistic thinking, wherein literally we treat the other person as an object, not consciously. But ask yourself, do you see and interact with the sacredness inside every person? Do you experience them as a thou? Do we recognize each person has things to offer? The wisdom and intelligence that emerges from that kind of an encounter is always greater than the sum of the individuals involved. Always. And many believe that greaterness, that's the divine. In other words, that's what's holy. It's what emerges from people coming together. Wheatley writes, I believe we can change the world if we start listening to one another again. I am sure that we all agree with that on paper, and yet, do we listen? Yes, I'm sure we do, and I imagine we can do better. I know we can. I know I certainly can. And there are many things that deter us from listening better. I could have many sermons about this. I would say, this is not what I'm about to say, but I believe that underneath it all is fear. The primary reason we stop listening is because we are afraid. We are afraid that we can't change what's happening in the larger world. We are afraid that the grandchildren we love or the people we love will fall victim to this. We are afraid that if I speak my truth, I will be ostracized. We are afraid that I may have to change a perception of myself. Another thing that keeps people from listening, all of us, is what is called a difficult conversation, and that's where I want to spend a couple of minutes. Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen from the Harvard Negotiation Project define difficult conversations as this: any time, any conversation in which we feel vulnerable or our self-esteem is implicated, when the issues at stake are important and the outcome is uncertain, when we care deeply about what is being discussed and about the people with whom we are discussing it. So a difficult conversation changes for each person, and it runs the whole gamut of, again, climate change, politics, to something like, where are we going to meet after church, right? The authors say that there are 3 conversations happening underneath the surface of any difficult conversation, though they are rarely explicitly included in the words being spoken. I call these sub-conversations. There are 3 of them. First, underneath what we're actually saying to each other is this conversation in each person's mind. I want to know what happened. We are intent on figuring out the facts. What happened? The second is feelings. We are all having feelings. And the third is about our sense of identity. How is this conversation interacting with who I think I am? So awareness of these conversations, including our contribution to them and blind spots, is what can transform a difficult conversation into a transformative conversation. To do so, however, we must be willing to be changed. So bring to your mind a difficult conversation in your life. Maybe one you're avoiding, one that is on the schedule for this week, or one that recurs on a regular basis. And hold that in your mind as I briefly touch on each of these sub-conversations. And think about, from these perspectives, how they might be influencing this difficult conversation. The first sub-conversation, what happened? Every person involved in a conversation has their own understanding about what happened. And if we're not careful, we assume other people have the same understanding that we do. I think I've shared here how my spouse and I had a different understanding in Washington, D.C. of which Starbucks we were going to meet at. So half a day later, was either of us wrong? Or did we just not check it out? We often move forward too often without clarifying each other's understandings. And included in this what happened conversation are also tendencies to assign blame. Who was right? Who was wrong? And attribute to other people their intentions. When in fact we know rarely is any one person to blame. Almost always everyone contributes to the situation, with exceptions, and has some part to play in what transpired. Another important thing to remember and recognize is that when we don't know someone else's intention, research shows that we will assign a negative intention to them. We don't want to think that's true, but it's true. If we don't know what somebody else is actually intending, we will assume the worst. The authors of Difficult Conversations say that difficult conversations are not about getting the facts right. That's not what makes those conversations difficult. It's about conflicting perceptions, interpretations, and values. The other thing to say about intentions is that often we don't even understand our own intentions, and other people don't understand theirs, because intentions are complex. They're layered. They're often contradictory. Inside of ourselves, we have 2 conflicting intentions happening at the same time. Which leads us to the second sub-conversation about feelings. And they write, difficult conversations don't just involve feelings, they are at their very core about feelings. So being honest about our feelings in a difficult conversation is often the last thing we want to do. And yet, avoiding our feelings makes red herrings out of issues and distracts us from being able to actually talk about what can be done. The third sub-conversation, the one that I personally find the most compelling, is the identity sub-conversation. Underneath what each person is saying aloud in this kind of conversation, they're also asking themselves, including us, all the time, what does this conversation say about me and who I think I am? And where it goes, what might that say about who I think I am? What does it mean to ourselves about our perceptions of ourselves as a parent, or a progressive liberal, or a tolerant person? What if I'm not as tolerant as I think I am? So we lose this wisdom of group learning and decrease our ability to change when we avoid difficult conversations or don't address these underlying sub-conversations. Again, Margaret Wheatley writes, when we humans don't talk to one another, we stop acting intelligently. When we humans stop talking to one another, we stop acting intelligently. Authentic conversation is messy. It takes time. It's vulnerable, and it's brave. And it is essential for change. So I'll close by asking the same questions I did at the start. Have we forgotten, as humans, one another? Have we forgotten we belong to one another? Have we forgotten how to love one another? How to see the sacred spark of creation in each other's eyes? Have we become so righteous, so sure of ourselves, as to think we do not need one another, or that we are smart enough on our own accord? We must turn to one another. Amen, and blessed be. And I'll invite us into our closing hymn in the same way we did the first one, which is, Do You Hear?
From the place where you stand to the outermost strand, do you hear, oh my friend? Do you hear, do you hear? All the dreams, all the dares, all the sighs, all the prayers, they are yours, mine and theirs. Do you hear, do you hear?
Please rise and embody your spirit, and let's join together our voices in the unison benediction while Nancy extinguishes the chalice. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. My friends, as we go from this place, this sacred day, may we go remembering that the gifts and the value of connection of turning to one another will actually save us. May we be brave enough to step over our fears. May we be open enough to be changed. May we remember that we belong to one another. Go in peace, my friends, and return again in great joy. Amen, and blessed be.